Welcome to one of the few truly independent and sponsor-free podcasts on this island Earth. If you like these free first-hour episodes, consider getting twice as much with THC Plus and treat yourself to the full 2-hour interviews as they're designed to be, where things only get deeper and more interesting behind the curtain. A Plus subscription gets you 5 new shows a month and a full archive of great interviews with amazing folks going all the way back to 2010. That is the gist, though there are other details, benefits, and bonus features you can hear more about at the end of this episode or in the show notes, where you can also find the links to sign up and join the club at thehighersidechats.com. Or if you want to listen on Spotify, sign up through Patreon. Enjoy.
The planet's puppet masters almost surely have a plan. There's clearly maybe something there beyond the realm of man. And until we've thoroughly tested every last close-chested view, I find the more we think we know, the less we really do. Where would we be without THC? 'Cause we know they're lying to us, just don't know to what degree. Where would we be without THC? The Higher Side Chat Show, Greg Carlwood and company. Hey!
Are you not entertained? From the Sunshine State, I'm Greg Carlwood. And many people have grown up with dreams of living the high life as a film star in Hollywood or a famous musician, buying into the seductive allure of the artistic archetype and the fame and fortune that comes with being anointed by the industry. Because for many years, it's been presented to us as pretty much the only real way to make it as any sort of entertainer. Yet, the more we learn about that life, the less appealing it seems to be. And beneath the thin facade of material success and the fleeting rush of fame lies a darkness that few others will ever experience, where the very gatekeepers to the industry, the predatory agents and managers, entice young, naive talents to sign away their future wealth while at their most desperate and vulnerable. And the public is presented with a perpetual pipeline of sexually abused, mentally damaged, and ruthlessly controlled celebrities who live like cows attached to a never-ending milking machine by the teams around them. And when you see this darkness and its effect on those embedded in it, the seemingly wild claims that the entertainment industries in the modern era, and maybe all eras, are primarily culture creation operations, mind control projects, and occult indoctrination rituals, doesn't seem nearly as wild as those claims did a few years ago. And what used to seem like innocent artistic expression appears more like a vehicle for sophisticated subconscious manipulation and deep psychological programming. Well, few researchers focus on these things with the level of commitment you get from today's guest, Isaac Weishaupt. I've been a fan since I read his book, Sacrifice: Magic Behind the Mic, and did our first interview about it back in 2014. He's been on THC a total of 5 times previously over the years and become a digital friend I enjoy riding co-pilot with on our strange path through conspiratorial commentary. Some of his other titles include A Grand Unified Conspiracy Theory, The Illuminati, Ancient Aliens, and Pop Culture, Kubrick's Code, The Star Wars Conspiracy, Hidden Occult and Illuminati Symbolism of Aliens and the New Age, The Dark Path, Conspiracy Theories of Illuminati and Occult Symbolism and Pop Culture, The New Age Alien Agenda and Satanic Transhumanism, Aliens, UFOs, and the Occult Use Your Illusion 1, Aliens, UFOs, and the Occult Use Your Illusion 2, UAP Disclosure, Spiritual Warfare, and Manifesting Extraterrestrials Through Entertainment. This guy knows how to load it up with the keywords. And he also has Use Your Illusion Volume 2, Symbolism in Film, Manifesting Extraterrestrials, and more. You also know him from his podcasts, Occult Symbolism and Pop Culture, and Breaking Social Norms, and you can find all that and more at IlluminatiWatcher.com. Here he is, the pop culture occult commentator, satanic symbolism sleuth, and true Illuminati watcher, the man who knows the plan, Isaac Weishaupt. Welcome back.
Greg, man, thanks for having me back on, and always with your glowing introductions. That's great. It's a pleasure to be back on this wonderful show. You were one of my earliest interviews back in the day, and I'm super honored to get back here and be invited back multiple times. So It's great to be back with old friends that have been around this game long enough that I trust who you are and your intentions and things, because I can't say that for everybody in the conspiracy world. There's a lot of wacky, kind of strange, psyopy misinformation folks out there.
Yes, a lot has happened in the 15 years that we've been in the game, but it is just the old 9 to 5 for us now, and I'm psyched to be doing this again with a familiar face. So it's great to always, look for a reason to have you back. And this one was the Diddy trial. I guess for me, I was looking at this stuff. It was heating up. They threw out a little red meat for us, but then it seemed like it fizzled out. And I don't know what you think about it, but it felt like maybe it was just a limited hangout show trial to some degree, but you followed it a lot more closely. What's your assessment? Was there anything really revealed that maybe someone who was watching more casually would have missed?
Diddy's had a long history of allegations and sort of adjacent conspiracy topics. So when we saw this trial coming down, I think a lot of us thought like this is going to be a real moment of change in the world. We're gonna start holding these people accountable for their crimes. It seems like he got off the hook basically. But if you followed the transcripts, because I was reading through the court documentation every single day for, I think it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks maybe, that the trial went on. It was interesting to me because it seemed on the surface there wasn't much happening here. But if you read through what was being said, who was saying it, and some of the ideas being presented, it seemed to me what we had was a bit of a revelation of the method concept going on here, because a lot of the conspiracies about Diddy were more or less proven during this trial. And I think that is part of the agenda. But I ultimately think what they were trying to do is, because I don't know, there's a lot to go through. Maybe we should just start with my observations in the trial, I guess, if that works for you.
Yeah, sure.
Diddy is facing life in prison, right? And we all kind of thought he was going to get it. He was in the Southern District of New York, which has some kind of high 98% success rate. He was facing a sentence for racketeering, sex trafficking, those sorts of things. Tenny Garagos, he said, I think it was Tenny, she said she's Mark Garagos's daughter. Mark Garagos, the famous attorney who did the Menendez brothers, Michael Jackson, Keith Rainier from the Nexium thing. So Tenny was defending Diddy, and she says, "Is it a federal crime to love baby oil?" And that, as funny as that is, and how headline catching that is, that's kind of where they took this, and that's basically how they won. I mean, I say they won. They found him guilty of like 2 of the 5 counts, and his sentencing is going to be in October. I'm guessing he's going to be out, right?
Right.
What was interesting leading up to all of this, the reason we thought we were going to get some serious dirt was because we had all these multiple lawsuits, like Lil Rod, who was Diddy's producer for one of his recent albums. And in that lawsuit, that was the most damning of all of them. Lil Rod was saying that Diddy was basically running an Epstein operation. He literally said that in the lawsuit. You can download and read it. And he was implying that he would do these sex parties and he would videotape it and use it as blackmail, amongst a bunch of other allegations, like how one time Lil Rod said that he saw Diddy sort of cover up a shooting by sort of, I don't know if paying off the cops is the right term, but sort of like he had to in with the cops and was able to sort of quiet things down, alluding to, some kind of connections that he had, and amongst other things, which we can come back to later. This idea of like Robin Greenhill and Lou Taylor and how they plug into all this. Like all this stuff was listed out in the Lil Rod document. And I thought, oh, wow, we're going to court now? Like this is going to be interesting, right? Including Lil Rod accused Cuba Gooding Jr. of sexually assaulting him.
Right.
And a whole bunch of stuff, right? Like crazy stuff. And we got exactly none of any of that discussed at all in this trial. But that's not what he was on trial for, was the Lil Rod thing. He was on trial for sex trafficking and racketeering, running his business as a criminal enterprise.
Right. Specifically Cassie Ventura and Jane. I don't think we know who Jane is still, right?
Right. Yeah, there was a handful of anonymous sort of Jane Does that were there. There were several, girlfriends. There were several people that worked with him. And one thing you notice with almost all the people is they would talk about how terrible Diddy was and how abusive he was, but then in the next breath they were sending him happy birthday cards and talking about how much they loved him. And it's like a real crazy, like it just shows you the power of fame,
Yeah.
and how these people were susceptible to some level of mind control, it seems like.
Yeah.
One of the persons even said that he had a like an alter ego, like he would dissociate and become angry, which I don't know how literal to take that. My conspiracy brain goes to sort of MK Ultra type stuff, but it was said about a lot of things were said about him, including LAPD officer Israel Flores said that Diddy looked devilish. At one point in the trial, he told I've got it in my notes somewhere. He told one of the people that worked with him how he was the devil. He told her that to her, and there was a lot going on here. So like Cassie was the big part of the show, and she was the first to take the stand, and it was supposed to be this sort of bombshell part of the trial. She was pregnant, and they were like, oh, we got to hurry up and get her up on the stand because she's about to deliver a baby. And I think that was all timed perfectly for maximum sympathy towards Cassie, right? And she was talking about how her interpretation of the events was that she signed on with Diddy. She had a 9-record deal, which they released, one of them and never did any more. So her job started to become a sort of sex slave and doing these freak off parties, and how she was suing Diddy because she alleges that he basically forced her, or coerced her, I should say, maybe, into taking like just tons of drugs, this 2C drug and ketamine and like crazy amounts of drugs, ecstasy all the time. And she incurred all these sort of medical issues from these freak offs, UTIs and sores on her mouth. But then the defense, they laid out their argument, which was that she was a voluntary party to this whole thing. And she, it's not Diddy's fault that she fell in love with him, kind of thing, which is kind of weird, right? Like it sounds like domestic abuse stuff.
Well, like you said, they have these text messages and stuff they can lean on to be like where she says, oh, I can't wait to have a freak off. And it's like, yeah, the allure of I have to suck up to this guy, even though maybe I'm mentally breaking. My understanding is that, yeah, essentially, like you said, the defense was, look, he might be an asshole. He might have hit a chick or two. He's not on trial for that. He might have liked orgies. Not a crime. Specifically,
Right.
These crimes you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And these text messages that say, oh, I can't wait to see you at the next freak off party, that's reasonable doubt. So
Right.
like all these situations, the offender, they can claim, well, they're just trying to get my money. I got hundreds of millions of dollars. Everybody's trying to get money. You liked it at first. Suddenly you don't like it. Well, what's going on? So I get that. But what I think is so interesting is that Maureen Comey, she was the federal prosecutor for both the Diddy and the Epstein cases. And surprise, surprise, they both kind of went nowhere. And then she got fired by the DOJ. So I saw the headline that she got fired, but she was fired July 17th. And that's 2 weeks after the Diddy trial ended. I don't know if there's anything significant about that. If there's some reason you think that it might have resulted in her firing. To me, that's more about the Trump stuff. Like he's going to be going after her father for the election stuff. He's trying to distract from Epstein with the stupid election stuff. People are bored with the election interference story. Every election's interfered with, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, that's just some of the stuff I thought was interesting. And I'm curious what you think about not only the fact that they always have their person in place, right? Like, okay, we're going to do a show trial. They're going to contain it to just the parameters in which we've set. But like the same prosecutor for Diddy and Epstein, you gotta think that's a red flag.
Right. I mean, this does feel like a sort of show trial because Maureen Comey, of course, the daughter of James Comey, and James Comey, when you talk about election interference back in 2016, like a week before the election, he made this big to-do about how the FBI was investigating Hillary Clinton's email servers or whatever when that was a big issue. That was the whole reason, Trump was saying lock her up, is because she had this illegal email server thing, right? James Comey was the one that was like, right before the election, it's like, you know what she does, and we're going to investigate her. And then later, after the election, then they were like, okay, we found nothing. She's fine. And it's like, well, that sounds like election interference to me.
Right.
So
For Trump.
for Trump. Yeah. And September, was it? Someone found a photo of James Comey on his Instagram not too long ago where he had these rocks on the beach. Have you seen this?
Yeah, it said 8645, which is like
8647.
or yeah, which is like, well, he's 45 and 47, but yeah, so it's like basically kill. 86 means to like it's off the menu or kill it or whatever. Like it seemed like a veiled threat. And the guys that had been head of the FBI, I think he understands coded language and reading between the lines and veiled threats.
And that was, someone found out that was he posted it on the 8,647th day after 9/11, 2001. Kind of weird stuff.
Whew.
But yeah, Maureen Comey, she worked the Ghislaine trial, and the belief is that this firing had nothing to do with her botching Diddy's case. I've read different theories that allegedly she is the one handing over all these files to the Wall Street Journal for Rupert Murdoch to run this sort of smear campaign against Trump. So, I mean, this gets into like weird 5D chess political territories. Right. It kind of, and it starts to get subjective where it's like, well, what do you personally believe and who do you personally like and dislike? So it gets really messy, but it is very strange. I mean, she worked for the Southern District of New York, which was like I said, it was like known as like the elite of prosecuting attorneys for criminal cases, which supports my sort of idea that the trial wasn't necessarily to get Diddy to go to prison. It was more about revealing a lot of these conspiracies that we've heard over the years, which is where, when you talk about Trump, this goes into that Jonathan Audi guy, right?
Yeah.
And so John Audi was a guy who was arrested back in 2018. He was at the Trump Hotel in Miami shooting at cops. And when he got pulled in for questioning, the video interview with him, he says about how he was a sex slave for Diddy and forced to have sex with Cassie, which everyone was like, well, that's insane. But it kind of splashed a little bit on the tabloidy news, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, he's still awaiting trial 7 years later, which is crazy. But
I wanted to just jump in now that you mentioned him, because I looked into this guy a lot because I was just curious at the time, how does this police interview leak? We never see police interviews leak, and this one has like the juiciest stuff ever, and it just seemed like it was set up that way. But I was looking into this yesterday, getting ready for this interview, and News Nation actually interviewed John Audi recently from jail, and he basically just said the same stuff, but with a few new details. Diddy called the male stripper service that he worked for and then paid him $800 extra to take it into drug-fueled sex with Cassie while Diddy whacked off in the corner. Happened about 15 times. One time, Cassie passed out. So Audi decided to secretly record the session for his own protection in case she didn't wake up. He felt like his life was in jeopardy, so he told Diddy about the secret recordings and settled with Diddy for $5 million. News Nation found no physical proof of this, but the dates do line up with Audi's purchase of, quote, a significant amount of Florida real estate. In his interview with News Nation, Audi said his mental health is improving. Then this is the quote. Basically, the day the incident happened at Trump's Miami hotel, I had taken medication. I think I was bipolar, but I wasn't sure. And I had an episode, and basically I've been taking my medication now every day, and I've been stable. I've had no issues in jail. I have no bad incidental behavior in jail, and I'm feeling ready to come out in society and be a productive member once again. I think he's still got some delusions if he thinks he'll ever be free again, because he's being charged with felony attempts to murder law enforcement officers, armed burglary, and armed grand theft. There's also an episode of Jesse Webster's Law and Crime where he says Cassie confirmed Audi was one of the sex workers during the trial. So to have this validated, I mean, even just tangentially, it's like, yeah, clearly this guy's not making it up. But we know a lot about MK Ultra and the way they mentally fuck these people up and the damage that gets done. And for him to say, like, the day I did this, I took some medication. Where'd you get that medication? What was the medication? Was it prescribed by a doctor? Which doctor? Was it your psychiatrist? Who else is on his client list? You know, all these questions that should unravel. But yeah, I just thought that little bit of added context was interesting because it is one of the most provocative tangents of the whole Diddy saga.
Yeah, and it holds more weight now that Cassie testified on the stand. that Jonathan Audi was definitely at the freak offs and even filmed it.
Okay,
So
good.
like
So,
that,
yeah.
that sort of confirms the story, because why would you say that under oath? But yeah, when he was arrested at Trump Tower, he was saying all kinds of crazy stuff about Trump and Diddy, and stuff like how Diddy was gay with Rick Ross and DJ Khaled, and how they do satanic rituals, and he even talked about CIA MK Ultra stuff, which is interesting now that you're telling me that he's said he was on a prescription drug, and he's sort of had mental clarity now or whatever.
Yeah.
But he implied Bohemian Grove stuff, blood sacrifice, messing with kids, and all kinds of things. But it's really weird because the actual document of his arrest, he says all kinds of stuff that's sort of contradictory. He says Trump is a traitor, Trump is Hitler, but then during the interview he talks about how Trump used to belong to the Illuminati, but now he's not, and they're trying to assassinate him, which was ironic because like later there was these alleged assassination attempts,
Yeah.
which I have my doubts about, but I'm a conspiracy guy, so I have doubts about everything. Another thing interesting Audi said was that Diddy was a member of the Boule, right? The supposed African-American branch of the Illuminati that LeBron James has tattooed on his chest. And I don't know, like this guy could just be, having a mental break. He very well could be, but he, during that interview at the police in 2018, he talked about Mark Garagos, which is Tenny Garagos's father, and how they drugged Michael Jackson and basically killed him for the royalties on the records. So it's just so strange. I don't know how to make heads or tails of it. He doesn't seem to be a reliable sort of witness, but he does sort of tell the truth with a lot of things. So I'm not really sure what to make of all that, because he says in one breath he's a Trump supporter, then the next breath he's calling him Hitler. It's really kind of out there. But the point remains is that there's some grain of truth about what Jonathan Audi said, which makes you think, well, maybe we should listen to more about what he has to say, and it depends how far you want to take that. But one of the other things, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just like that the whole situation, the whole dust up got people to look under the rug of all these speculations. It made it seem a little more legitimized, even if we don't have a conviction. I guess we have a kind of a light conviction, but just like, why did Diddy have a teenage Justin Bieber over for a secret recording session and then buy him a car after? Why were Diddy and Ellen such good friends? Why is Ellen's TV show set Epstein's temple? You can really draw a circle around all these people. And then there's that video we talked about last time where Diddy had an adopted little white girl who looked really scared, and he's like hugging on her and stuff. And it's like, why are you adopting her to help her? Why don't you just like help her family? It was super strange, but you can draw a line around all these freaks.
Yeah, we didn't get any clear proof of any of the sort of more wild accusations that are going around that seem to be, holding some weight. One of the things, because as you know, right, you talked about our first interview we did about my hip hop conspiracy book, Sacrifice Magic Behind the Mic. We got more confirmation. So Jonathan Audi talked about how there's this sort of hip hop police connection, and how they use hip hop as a way to traffic drugs for, the intelligence agencies or whatever, through private jets. And this is definitely a thing, right? There was that whole movie about Barry Seal with, Tom Cruise. That whole movie was about that idea. There's the Clinton scandals about this kind of thing. But in the rap community, lots of these rappers have private jets. Jay-Z does. Juice WRLD had, when he died, he had 70 pounds of marijuana on his private jet. I mean, that's 70 pounds of marijuana. Like, he wasn't just smoking that. That was right. That was trafficking. And what's interesting is that NBA YoungBoy, who's like a newer rapper, the younger people love him, he got arrested for trafficking cough syrup. It was funny because when I was covering the Diddy trial on my Breaking Social Norms podcast, and I talked about NBA YoungBoy when we talked about Jonathan Audi, and I said how I think NBA YoungBoy must be a Fed or an informant or something, because he's got a massive rap sheet full of felonies. Then he gets arrested for this drug ring of basically writing phony prescriptions for cough syrup. And out of all that, he ends up with a little bit of probation. And, he's got years of charges of firearms, drug offenses, assaults, robbery, kidnapping, attempted murder. And this guy is just like basically on house arrest. And I say that. And then the next week, NBA YoungBoy got arrested again for gun charges again. And he was in doing a prison sentence. I don't know how long, a year or something like that. And Trump pardoned him that next week, which kind of confirmed my suspicions. I'm like, this guy's got to be a Fed or an informant or something. Now, people online claimed that the reason he got a pardon was because Trump was selling a crypto coin, and supposedly NBA YoungBoy's mother bought a coin for some exorbitant amount of money. And when you have the coin, that gives you access to Donald Trump, allegedly, as they say. And that's why it happened. I don't know. I can't prove any of that, but that's what they say.
Oh, that is an interesting little saga for sure. You wanted to bring it back to Robin Greenhill and this Taylor fella, and I wanted to let you do that. So there's a lot of stuff. I hope we can. There's a Travis Scott update. There's all kinds of interesting stuff. But tell us a little bit more about Robin Greenhill and Taylor here.
Yeah. So the quick version. So on that Lil Rod document, he calls out Robin Greenhill, which was Diddy's financial manager. Also, Lou Taylor was the business partner at TriStar Sports. So Robin Greenhill and Lou Taylor's name, they come up a lot. They came up a lot in the Free Britney situation because I guess they were the ones that coordinated the conservatorship. And in fact, Britney Spears even had said something on Instagram about Lou Taylor and Robin Greenhill trying to kill her, and how she was going to sue TriStar for it. Yeah, the Lil Rod called out Robin Greenhill for allegedly sending money over to these sex workers that Diddy would hire from, which, by the way, also came from the male sex workers came from Gigolos, the show on Showtime, which I mean, that's what I'm saying. A lot of this stuff, like, there was nothing like super obvious, but I think if you start unpacking little pieces of it, you can see there's weird things going on, like with this whole Gigolos thing. It's Cowboys for Angels was the name of the, what do you call it? Like a male prostitution thing. And Vin Armani, so TMZ posted about this when it dropped, because I had watched the show Gigolos on Showtime, Showtime. And Vin Armani was one of the Gigolos, and Vin Armani is now I don't want to call him a conspiracy theorist, but he talks a lot about conspiracy, spirituality, and crypto on Twitter.
The Holy Trinity.
Yeah, the Holy Trinity. And he was pictured on the TMZ thing. So I was like, wait, are they saying Vin Armani was one of the dudes that was showing up to these parties? I don't know. But one of the Gigolos, Ash, he's doing 20 in prison for assault or murder, I should say murder. One of his clients, there was a documentary about it. But the whole Gigolos thing is also kind of strange, which you can't. And this is where things also get weird, right? Let's talk about the Gigolos for a second, because one of the Jane Does who testified said that a guy named Don came over from the Gigolo show, and I looked that up. Google AI tells me that Don is the name for Garen James, who's the owner and founder of Gigolos. I can't prove that. That's just what Google AI said, with no link for me to click to prove that. I don't know where it came from. That same Jane Doe said that the parties weren't called freak-offs for her. They were called hotel nights. And if you recall, I believe we talked about this the last time I was on your show. There was this woman named Candy Michelle Johnson, who wrote a book called The Adrenochrome Witch, and she was making wild claims about Diddy back then, before like John Audi, back before anyone sort of thought it was real.
Yeah.
And she had a bunch of books that she had written. And I say books, some of them were manuscripts, some of them were scripts, some of them were like short stories. One of them was called Hot Nights with Cassie, or Hotel Nights with Cassie, which, now that I see a testimony that says Diddy also called these things hotel nights, I'm like, dude, this Candy Michelle Johnson, she was for sure, she claims she worked for Diddy.
Yeah. She
must have been working for Diddy. How does she know all this beforehand? She also had an image on her Instagram of baby oil back before anyone talked about this. So there's something weird with that. I think I lost my. We're talking about Robin Greenhill, right? Greenhill was alleged to have been putting surveillance equipment into Britney's phones and her houses and stuff, which makes me wonder about Diddy, because he had all these surveillance cameras that no one really seemed to talk about during the trial. And she was also part of getting the medications administered to Britney. That takes me into some of the stuff. Like you mentioned, John Audi said he was having mental issues with prescription drugs and stuff. Well, Kanye West also was talking about how he was on lithium and had all these issues. And then Jamie Foxx also said the same thing. And Jamie Foxx was the cameraman for all of Diddy's parties from the 90s, right? So I don't know how the mechanics work. I'm not in the inner circle of that, but there's something strange with all of that. And then Lou Taylor is she's also managing the Kardashians and Kylie Jenner, and she was part of the whole stink about Kylie Jenner becoming a quote unquote self-made billionaire, which turned out to not really be true. And during the trial, there was an article on Media Takeout that said Diddy also doesn't have the money that, because they say Diddy's like the, I don't know, second wealthiest guy in hip hop. He's a billionaire. And they said, well, that's not true either. So it just makes you wonder, like, do these people really have any money, or is everything just an illusion, you know?
Right. You kind of need to hold it back from them to have the leverage, because I think that's the big game, is that these people are leveraged by their teams, you know, whether it's the Harley Pasternak trainer guy or the manager or the agent or all of them working together. All these people are highly controlled and compromised. They, like I said in the intro, they really are milked like cash cows. You get them young and you say, hey, we can make you a star, but you're going to have to sign these agreements where we are going to end up getting the best deal out of this. And then we want to milk you for as much as we possibly can. How many times do we see these tours and these artists are like checking out for exhaustion? You think they're doing this because they want to? The average person sees that and like, oh, I'd love to have a lifestyle like that, going up on stage at the arena and, you know, having the crowd cheer my name. Not really. It probably gets old very quickly, and they work harder than a lot of regular 9-to-5 people. And it's because they're forced to, because they are the cash cow for the teams. And I just, now that we're getting more into this, the stuff we know now that we might not have known when you wrote that first book, it is way more about drugs and just controlling their prescriptions and getting them on things. And just, why don't you go see our psychiatrist we have on staff? They'll hook you up. You know, we'll help you deal with your fatigue and your anxiety.
Yeah, it feels like it's coordinated in a way to keep people, keep the hamster on the wheel, right? To sort of keep making money for these people. So it is kind of sad, right?
Yeah, and you can't let them have all that money. And they don't really have it. A lot of times we just see them in music videos, or we see them with the chains and this. Like, they have access to nice things that they can wear and be presented with, and nice cars on lease. But do you have the cold hard cash to quit the industry? That's where I think you're right. Like, they don't have as much as they say, or they would just live their life.
My wife was telling me she saw a video where they were saying about how it works on the inside, that these celebrities, artists and such, they'll be wearing, you know, luxury branded stuff and have these chains from particular, you know, jewelry makers, but all of that stuff is gifted to them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not money that they're getting. They're just getting like these lavish things. And we see this and we think they're buying these things, and that's not really the case. So it does raise a lot of questions. Like, how much money are these people actually making? I don't know. I think there's a lot, like everyone knows, like there's a lot more going on behind the scenes of entertainment than what we know. The one interesting and kind of funny thing that I found that I wanted to bring up before we move on, I know you want to move on to the other topics. John Audi, he claimed that Donald Trump had performance issues because he's on Propecia. And what I thought was interesting, because there's all these connections with Trump and Diddy, right? Trump was up there defending Diddy, and there's all these footage and photos of him hanging out with Diddy forever, and they even considered pardoning him. Don't ask me how that works, because just a few years ago, I think Diddy was endorsing Hillary Clinton or something like that, but whatever. During the trial, there was an article in TMZ about a new lawsuit against Diddy, and the woman claimed that Diddy's penis was the size and shape of a Tootsie Roll. Right.
God.
And I can't help but see all these like abusive men have weird like penis issues.
Yeah,
like Hitler supposedly did, Harvey Weinstein did, Epstein did, and now Diddy.
Yeah.
Right. All these guys have these strange, and I don't know if that's
which one had the egg shaped dick. Was that Epstein, or was that okay? Yeah. Egg shaped. Okay.
it just makes me wonder about like the psychology of these people. Like maybe they're not able to find a healthy way of channeling, the frustrations of that issue.
Right.
And now we've all got to sit back and watch them do horrific things to people. I don't know.
It wouldn't it be interesting? I mean, obviously we know there's a big network that goes back further than any one person, but just the idea that all these people, all this fallout is just because somebody had a dick issue, and while normal people are out there just getting laid, having fun in their college days, these people are instead toiling away. How can I make enough money that I can make good on all the stuff I missed out, and no one's going to be able to care or say anything about my weird dick?
Right. That's what it seems like. And that's just a hot take I wanted to throw in there.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. And on the subject of Trump, like, I definitely am not in this like tit for tat. Oh, is it the red team or blue team? They're all dirty. Who cares? I do think it's interesting, though, to watch the Epstein story, because it was always so lumped in with the Clintons and the Democratic establishment. And now the whole focus has shifted. Trump is the one client of Epstein's. Like, it's basically just so weird. I think, the whole thing with the modeling, it does go back very far, and it is a strange relationship. And I'm on board with the fact that they're probably both on that plane and both guilty of some unsavory stuff when it comes to, Clinton and Trump. But I found out a little bit more about the claims of his first wife recently. I just want to throw this out there. I'm sure it's old news and people know, but she said under oath, I believe this was during, maybe not under oath, but during their divorce proceedings in court, she said that he raped her. And I knew this came up in the movie The Apprentice that they made, a little while ago. And obviously that's a huge claim. And then it's like, well, you can't rape your wife. People say stuff like that. Well, the details of the story is that apparently he got, I say this because you mentioned the alopecia thing or the propecia thing, but he got a scalp reduction surgery to try to close the bald spot. I know about bald issues and how it can get in your head. You do some desperate things, I'm sure. I just wear hats, it's a lot easier. But he did a scalp reduction surgery to try to close the bald spot, and it was a doctor that she recommended, and apparently it was very, very painful. So he comes home and he's in all this pain, and he's like, "You stupid bitch, you're the one who told me to go to this guy." And so then it escalated into a rape scenario, and he pulled out a clump of her hair and was like, "Do you like that? Because that's how I feel right now." And I was like, wow, that is insanely brutal. And then apparently she fell down the stairs and died, and no one really knows what happened. And she's buried on his golf course.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was going to ask, is this the one that's buried on the golf course?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I never heard that before. Yeah, it makes you wonder if all this psychosis is just ego issues, and that would make sense, because these people that are this drawn to power and wealth, it's I feel like there's like some demons in there, right?
Yeah, it's either the dick or the hairline, maybe both. Luckily, I only got one problem. But let's move on to the update on Travis Scott, because this leads us into a whole rabbit hole that I was so interested in, because it's basically like a Pizzagate kind of a loop, but nobody talks about it. Everybody knows Pizzagate. This is like almost the same thing, involving strange art, involving a woman who's basically like an Abramovich clone, like an archetype of the old witchy lady who's involved in art. And anyway, so this was basically 2 interviews ago we did in 2021 when Travis Scott had the Astroworld ritual thing and the whole stampeding of the crowd. And since then, there's been a Netflix documentary on the situation, and my understanding there is that, based on what I saw you cover, your analysis is that it seems like they're trying to peg it all on Live Nation and do a little damage control for him. But there's a lot more to this thing and his Apple contract. And talk to us a little bit about the Travis Scott updates, the Astroworld updates.
So Travis Scott is he's a guy I've been covering since I don't know, when he first came out. He's a fine enough rapper. Like I like his music well enough. I'm not like a huge fan. I'm also not like one of these guys who thinks he's overrated. I think he's pretty good. I actually like his music, but he's always had strange, some people would call it artistic stuff in his videos. I would call it occult stuff, like the one he's doing the grand hailing sign of distress of Freemasonry while he's wearing a shirt with an inverted pentagram that's on fire. There's a lot of like alchemy symbolism that he puts in his videos with the black bird and all kinds of crazy stuff. So when he was doing the Super Bowl, I was like, oh, this is going to be good, right? And then 2021, of course, we have the concert, which was just a field day for me with the satanic symbolism, as we talked about. Oh, I should also mention Lou Taylor manages Travis Scott too, by the way.
Of course.
So there was a Netflix documentary that came out recently, and there were some interesting things that I found on there where the photographer for Live Nation, they told her they wanted her to go do photography at the Astroworld concert, right? And they said they wanted photos showing how crazy the fans were, and they wanted photos of the fans rushing the gates and all this stuff because they wanted to sort of promote things, the concerts and such. It was interesting because that's exactly what happened at Astroworld. They charged the gates and broke them down, and that's one of the claims about why this thing went wrong, is because there was too many people there. And anyway, they broke down the gates, and like they were letting people in who didn't have tickets apparently. And it's almost like, what if that was programmed? What if that was done on purpose? To kind of like the Beatles, right? There's this Beatles propaganda of them coming to America and these girls screaming at the airport and screaming at the Ed Sullivan Show, when the conspiracy is that the manager for the Beatles was hiring these girls to scream and act like they knew who the Beatles were. Kind of like the idea of buying a Russian bot farm for social media now. That's kind of our equivalent today.
Yeah.
Is to drive likes and comments and stuff that aren't real. But that's what made me think of it, and it just points to another idea of like the entertainment industry having some kind of manipulation involved, some kind of deception on some level. And his concerts over the years, he's incited a lot of sort of violent behaviors, as I think we talked about last time. But I didn't realize this, but during the Astral concert of 21, his first song that he came out to was Escape Plan, and because they played a clip in it, and then it dawned on me and hit me. The lyrics, it talks about opening up the gates at the very beginning of the song. And that's what the whole ritual of the stage was. It was like this portal opening up through the energies of the crowd, and the portal is to hell. And that's supported by a variety of symbolism. And the most damning is the freaking shirt Travis Scott wore showed a guy in blue, like a stick figure in blue, going through a portal and coming out red with horns, right? And then people point to like the dove on fire coming out of this mountain that was on the stage. People say there was all this crazy frequency music happening that was making people feel uneasy before the show, because there was two stages, and Travis Scott, his performance at the mountain was the only performance to happen at that stage. So as the documentary points out, all the other acts were done at this other stage, and then when they were like, okay, it's time for Travis Scott, everybody had to migrate over to this new stage with the mountain. And that's where as they indicate in the documentary, that's where the problems started, is because too many people funneled into one side of the stage. But anyways, what made me think of was like, okay, so they had to sort of consecrate this mountain stage, and it could only be used for Travis Scott, like a ritual that had its sole purpose. Like, it just seems kind of weird to me. Also, the people that chose the left-hand path, the left hand of the stage, were the ones that died, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I thought was weird when it comes to like left-hand path occultism and things like this. But what happened in 2023, prior to this documentary, what happened in 2023 is that there was all these lawsuits against Travis Scott, and he was cleared of wrongdoing. And there was a police report released that showed he had a contractual agreement with Apple that he had to finish that show to get his $4.5 million purse. His spokesperson claimed he did not have the authority to stop the concert even if he wanted to. I don't know if I believe that. I mean, you saw people literally screaming like, hey, people are dying here. And you saw he literally stopped the show at one point because there was an ambulance coming to like help somebody out. So, I mean, I don't know the legalities of it, but that's what they claim, is that, oh, he's innocent because he couldn't have done anything anyway. But what was curious is that the Houston Police Department report that finally dropped in 2023 dropped the same exact day that he dropped his Utopia album, which I don't know what the angle is there.
Yeah.
I just think it's really weird.
Dominating the news cycle, probably.
Yeah, it could be that, right? It could be like that day you search for Travis Scott and it's like, oh, Travis Scott's got a new album.
Right.
Like, don't look at the police. It's hard to know what to believe. But he was supposed to do an album launch at the Pyramid of Giza that same day. But the people over there called him a Satanist and they canceled it. Live Nation does damage control and they're like, no, they didn't cancel it because he's a Satanist. It was canceled because they had problems with the construction. That was what Live Nation said. But then if that was true, you think, well, okay, well, maybe they're going to make up and do the concert later at the pyramids. No, they didn't. Instead, he went and did a concert in Rome. But another curious thing that I found when I was sort of catching up on all the updates to this Travis Scott thing, Kanye West, who, I mean, we could do hours on Kanye West, right? He's almost too much. I can't even follow him anymore. It's just so much going on with the guy. Because he also showed up at the Diddy trial. He also called Diddy a Fed, but then was there supporting Diddy. It's so bizarre. And another thing that was weird, to go back to Diddy, is that there was a language that Diddy used that mirrored what Kanye West said on. There's like a famous sort of Kanye West clip from TMZ just a few years ago where he talked about how his mother died for this shit. And he's like, yeah, Michael Jordan's father, like, people come up missing in Hollywood. Isn't that kind of weird?
Yeah.
And almost that exact same language was used by Diddy. One of the Jane Does who testified said that he said the same, threatened her with the same language of like, people come up missing around here. And I just thought that was kind of strange because there's all these parallels. And then to bring it over back to Travis Scott, Kanye West, of course, the guy who put Travis Scott on the map, he signed Travis Scott. And there was a Donda listening party in, I don't remember what year, just a couple years ago. And on the artwork for the Donda party, it showed a dove, which was supposed to, symbolize his mother who died, Donda. And he had a Donda Academy that I think has since shut down. And they had a team on there called the Donda Doves. But anyway, my point is that Travis Scott showed us the dove coming out of that cave whilst on fire to start this, horrific satanic ritual, or so I claim to be satanic ritual, because it just seems like that. It seems like, and then we don't have time today, of course, but I'm working a deep dive into Saturn death cults and the history of Saturn worship and how it really does have a basis in human sacrifice. Like, that's not, it's not conjecture. It's not satanic panic. Like, it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at all these events that we say, oh, it's a blood sacrifice event, like, if it is, then we found the religion that they're doing this for. It's a Saturn black cube religion.
Heck yeah. Man, you hit pretty much all the things that were in my notes that were interesting. Yes, he came out to the song Escape Plan, and this whole thing happened because people couldn't escape because there was no plan for the scenario, and it's just like, wow. And yeah, people who died are the ones who took the left-hand path towards the stage. And also, I heard you say this, Travis Scott, before the event, years ago, I guess, was in a music video wearing a Pearl Jam shirt from their album Dark Matter. And they did a concert for Dark Matter that had a trampling event. A Dark Matter indeed. And I just thought the wordplay again with the title is fun, but also the fact that Travis Scott clearly gets hard over trampling events because why are you wearing, you don't seem like a Pearl Jam fan. But you seem like you're wearing it because specifically this is associated with a trampoline event. Yeah, dark guy. So let's jump over to the other reason Travis Scott popped up in the news, and that's this weird photo shoot with Michelle Lamy. I'm going to put the photo up. So for people who haven't seen this photo yet and are watching, but not really, watching, some people look away when the podcasts are happening, but look at the screen because the picture is going up. It's this weird photo shoot they did where it looks like it's a post-coitus photo shoot with Travis Scott and this 81-year-old witch. This lady, I guess she's a fashion icon who paints her fingers black and, like I said, a Marina Abramovic kind of archetype. Well, this story goes pretty deep. She, as I looked up, she goes to a lot of Balenciaga events. Again, red flag, the fashion industry, it's all connected. Well, talk to us about this chick and this weird photo shoot and why this is a dust up and where do you think these roads lead?
Michelle Lamy, she's interesting looking for sure, but she's got an interesting story too. And she's partners with Rick Owens, who's the guy who's another fashion sort of icon. He did some Converse photo shoots where with a bunch of inverted pentagrams a few years ago. But the Travis Scott connection comes through because Travis Scott says that he was backstage with Michelle Lamy and Rick Owens, and the backstage area was sort of designed by so Rick Owens and Michelle Lamy own a business together of doing a variety of things, including like designing furniture, designing art, that sort of thing. Travis Scott apparently had them design his sort of backstage, I don't know, set. I don't know what you would call it. His room is set up. He invited a photographer named Nick Knight to do a photo shoot with Michelle Lamy and Travis Scott back there. And like you said, the photos are, I mean, they heavily imply that Travis Scott and Michelle Lamy had sex. Like they're kind of like laying in a, like you said, a post-coital caress of sorts. But what you also see on the images is you see a ton of orbs, right?
Yes,
and this is, referring to like the ghost hunting phenomenon of taking a photo and you see orbs that are, some believe they're spirits, some believe they're just energy. I've taken photo. I used to do ghost hunting back in the day, and I've seen these as well. These orbs. It's kind of weird stuff. In fact, we went to, this is back in like 99. We went to a high school that was supposedly haunted, and we were in the auditorium, and there was a camcorder on a tripod, and they said, look at and it was kind of a new technology back then to have the camcorder with a little flip up screen that you could observe what was being recorded. And they were like, check out the screen and just sit there and watch it, and you'll see orbs floating by. And I've seen them with my naked eye on the screen, So there's something to that, right?
Yeah.
And so the people involved here are interesting. Nick Knight, he's a very famous photographer. He's also a music video director. He did work with Kanye West and Lady Gaga and Travis Scott. So he did the photo shoot. Michelle Lamy, she was she's in her 80s, right? And she's been in the fashion industry her whole life, basically. But she also was a lawyer at a certain point, and she studied. I read through this interview with her. That's how I know this stuff. She studied a philosopher named Gilles Deleuze, which I'm probably butchering his name. But the reason that stood out to me is because I've been researching the Dark Enlightenment for a period of time now, and Gilles Deleuze comes up in the philosophies of the Dark Enlightenment and Nick Land and the ideas of virtual reality and all these things, which we can, unpack that later. The interview I read from Lampoon Magazine, she talks about Deleuze, and she talks about how she took his college course on Alice in Wonderland and the Mirror, is what she said, which already is like, okay, that's, we're getting into occulted territory, because that's a heavily occulted story that Alice traveling underground to have her enlightenment process happen. And then in the interview, she compares Travis Scott to Marina Abramovich, which, as you rightfully so points out, plugs us into a whole host of conspiracies like Pizzagate, because she had, Marina Abramovich, another one of these sort of occult artists that had these spirit cooking events with Lady Gaga, and she actually was teaching Lady Gaga the Abramovich method of sort of stripping down her ego for, her art or whatever. But Michelle Lamy compares Travis Scott to Marina Abramovich in that interview specifically. But Gilles Deleuze, he had written books. Like I said, he inspired a lot of this Dark Enlightenment stuff, which when you unpack the Dark Enlightenment, one of the major philosophies you'll find is accelerationism. And it's the belief that we need to accelerate this technology and hyper-capitalism, because the way they view the world now through people like Peter Thiel, and you can hear this with Peter Thiel's interview with Ross Douthat at the New York Times. Peter Thiel he's like angry. He's angry that technology hasn't fulfilled his science fiction fantasies. He's angry that we're not already living in a digital matrix, right? And he's probably seen too many movies. He probably thought, like all of us, we'd be in flying cars like Back to the Future showed us by now, which we're not. So these accelerationists, they believe that the reason we haven't had these things is because we put legislation up to sort of slow things down, to be careful with AI and that sort of thing. And they say, no, we need to just, including, and this goes into like political ideas, and like they hate any kind of socialism thing, because they're very heavy like social Darwinians, and they're like, look, we can't slow down progress to take care of poor people and people with handicaps and these sorts of things. We need to just sort of plow over them. They're going to get left behind. We need to just keep it moving. Like that's what acceleration is.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, Gilles Deleuze wrote books that in the 1970s that were sort of the seeds of this weird accelerationism theory. And in one of the books, he talks about how he views the world as everything is just machines, including the human body. We're just machines for organs. And that capitalism and systems like capitalism are inevitably going to tear down all systems and structures and identities. And he wants the people that are into this stuff, they want to, like I said, go into sort of a hyper capitalist space and sort of break down the material world, break down the physical body. And what all this means to me when I hear all this, because Gilles Deleuze was also talking about virtuality is what he called it. It's about living in this virtual reality space. It's like, we're talking about digital matrix stuff. We're talking about uploading our consciousness through sort of Neuralink chips into the internet. And Deleuze, he influenced, Michelle Lamy, Genesis P. Ulrich was interested in Deleuze, Brian Eno, and all these people. But like any of these sort of fringy philosophers, he committed suicide, So, I mean, like, is this someone we want to listen to? I don't know.
Right.
Seems kind of weird. But yeah, so Michelle Lamy, the fact she's hanging out with Travis Scott and comparing him to Marina Abramovich is kind of priceless, to be honest.
Yeah, that is really kind of insane. She's the one who looks more like the archetype, but to say that, it's like, well, clearly there is occult stuff going on, and they're winking and nodding publicly. And okay, so this is where I hope we can stick the landing with the first hour here, because I want to get at least a little bit into some of the really wild stuff I have planned here. But you got this Deleuze character who seeds this philosophy, the Dark Enlightenment, we're calling it, basically technocracy and transhumanism sort of stuff. He inspires Curtis Yarvin and Nick Land. Now, J.D. Vance apparently loves Yarvin, and that would make sense because he's the little puppet boy of Peter Thiel. Nick Land, this is wild. So to quote your Substack on this Dark Enlightenment series, you say, first off, Nick Land titled his book The Dark Enlightenment. That's where we're getting the term. It's not just to be provocative, but he's credited as the godfather of accelerationism, which takes us back to the 1990s, you say, where he was a British philosopher who taught at Warwick University. He also participated in a group called the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, the CCRU, and they were wild. They were exploring demonology, numerology, and esoteric ideas such as hyperstition. Nick believed there exists a positive feedback loop with culture that reinforces its own magnetic chain. Symbols are transmitted to everyone in society via the internet and cause changes in reality. The example you put in parentheses is Pepe the Frog. Nick saw capitalism as a force that is very sensitive to this idea because confidence creates the reality and sells the product. In an interview with Nick Land from 2009, he said that the thing that is hidden from us, the occult, is an alien order of time which shows up as synchronicities. He also describes hyperstitionality as something that condenses our reality but comes from H.P. Lovecraft's old ones, much like we see in John Carpenter's Mouth of Madness film. In a 3-hour interview on Scott Mannion's Metalore in September 2023, Nick Land describes the CCRU's engagement with magic and entities from the outside. He also confirms that the Kabbalistic numerological expression of CCRU was equivalent to the number 666. Nick Land's work inspired artists Jake and Dinos Chapman, who were also members of the CCRU. They've continued that CCRU perspective by continuously exploring accelerationism and having collaborations with Nick Land. They also collaborated with Balenciaga, which takes us into much darker territory, you say. And there's another photo I will have them add to the screen and post from this piece that is very dark. They're sitting in chairs. There's a weird demon in the corner with 4 heads, and there's blood everywhere. You are connecting some wild dots. I don't hear about the CCRU and these people. We get glimpses. The Balenciaga dust-up happened and all this. But you are really going a level deeper. Talk to us about some of the stuff I just laid out, how Balenciaga is involved, and what their role is to play in all this, because it just seems like a weird fashion company, but obviously it's more than that.
Yeah, so this is one of those moments for me over this my last 15 years of doing this sort of research, where pieces started falling together, and I thought, man, this is too weird. And it goes into what's the Dark Enlightenment, and I've done, man, I don't know, 6 or 7 episodes since February, I believe, on my podcast about it. I've done several sort of shorter reads on my Substack about the same content, basically. And I'm writing a book about it, which I don't know when I'll get it done. It'll probably be spring 26. But it's fascinating. It's where everything connects together when you get into the world of conspiracies and the occult. Now it's sort of bled into our politics, right? Which isn't my forte. Politics is not my forte, because I think it's a very futile effort to sort of debate opinions on some level.
Amen.
But that's where the territory takes us today. And I guess we could start by talking about what the Dark Enlightenment is, because it's basically the inversion of the Enlightenment. It's an inversion of the Constitution of America, and it, like I said, this is influenced by philosophies that have been guided by demonic forces. And I don't say that in some kind of crazy Christian warrior satanic panic concept. Yeah, so you have to understand the philosophies here. And the Dark Enlightenment, it wants to pursue a new world order, a new government, and it wants to get rid of American democracy. It wants to get rid of these ideas of equality and taking care of our neighbors and all these things, and sort of have a really cold, non-empathetic view of the world. It's sort of like because Peter Thiel was a libertarian for a period of time, and this is kind of, I think, what you would get if you got into sort of a satanic libertarianism in a way, right? I think it's about literally tearing down everything we know of with American democracy and replacing it with this authoritarianism, this corporation. They want to make it into a corporation because, in his school of thought, it's like businesses and the free market are the best way of going about everything. And there's elements of that are true, right? We live in a capitalist society, and it's pretty good. I enjoy air conditioning and water in my drinks. It's pretty nice. But what they want to do is they think that they can run the country with a CEO king that's not elected, right? Not a CEO king that's that will have a group of techno elites that manage network states. They call this a variety of terms, and they'll call them freedom cities. They'll call them I can't think of the other names for it, but all these ideas go back to the occult concepts laid out by Manly P. Hall and Francis Bacon in their books, The Secret Destiny of America and The New Atlantis. It's the same concept. It's an idea about a society that's perfected because they put scientists and technocrats in charge.
Yes,
of everything.
And not to cut you off. So, of course, this is like techno-transhumanism. I mean, the centralized control grid stuff that everybody talks about, this is the philosophical groundwork for this. But I just heard you use that term, Freedom City, and you have another Substack post about what's going on in Washington, D.C. You said, will Washington, D.C. be the home for the first Dark Enlightenment Freedom City for Peter Thiel? And you talk about the Big Balls event as a James Shelby Downard-esque public psychodrama to justify the federalization of the police force. And that could be a giant op to usher in a test city for this larger project. I just wanted to throw that in because I thought it was topical and it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that whole thing with the bit, you'd have to read my Substack, but the this dude Big Balls who worked for Doge, which was tasked to reduce the spending in government, which okay, like that's fine. We spend a lot of money. We have a deficit. We should like address that, right?
Yeah.
But he was assigned as part of Doge to sort of like reduce the government and all this stuff. And the irony of it all is that this guy who's very young, I don't know how old he is now, 19, 20, he's a young guy. He did this work to like reduce, fire government workers and reduce the size of government, cancel a bunch of contracts. And then within 2 months, he leaves Doge and now he's a federal worker working for the government, making $170K a year. Like that's insane.
I love it. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, the hypocrisy is just off the charts. So my point is, I think that because the supposed event that happened was, and the timeline of how this worked was strange. In March, Trump signs this executive order talking about how, we need to, bring crime down in the capital of Washington, D.C. Okay, sounds good. Then we get this event where supposedly Big Balls at 3 a.m. was at his car in this neighborhood. And if you Google the coordinates of the neighborhood, because I'm not from DC, I don't know anything about it, but when you look at the neighborhood, like it looks beautiful. I'm like, that looks like the most beautiful hipster part of Salt Lake City. Like it looks very safe, but whatever. They say that he was at this area, and at 3 a.m. these hoodlums come up to him and they want to steal his car. So he throws his girlfriend in the car and then confronts the guys and gets beat up, and he's all bloody. There's like this photo of him showing him like all beat up. And the cops just happen to be patrolling right then and there, and they break it up. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, it's 3 a.m. and you're telling me like there's multiple cops like patrolling just down the street. They just happen to be there at the same time. It sounds like you got this under control. Like that's a pretty good response time to me.
Yeah.
And I just don't believe it. There's people that are claiming that Big Balls was actually soliciting a prostitute. I don't know any of that's true. That's what they're claiming. But anyway, my point is I think it's all staged. It's problem, reaction, solution. David Icke taught me this many moons ago. It's whether it was staged or not, or partially staged, whatever, they're using it now to be like, oh my God, look, it's rampant with crime, which maybe it is. I don't know. I don't live there. The statistics from the own police department say that violent crime is down. So take from that what you will.
So I thought it was a good point that tied into recent events that kind of goes from the Dark Enlightenment and spills out into real world applications of the philosophy that have now been justified in our current timeline. But I don't want to leave the free listeners hanging when it comes to that stuff I read about the CCRU and Balenciaga, maybe more the CCRU, because it seems like these people were involved in a cybernetic culture research unit and doing all kinds of demonology type stuff. And this has been my thing. And I know you also recently interviewed Jacques Vallée. I want to ask you a little bit about that eventually. I've always found it curious that Jacques Vallée is this leading thinker in ufology and then also involved in the foundation of cybernetics. And I don't know if he's exactly tied to the CCRU, but he definitely is one of these core people at the beginning of the infancy of the internet. And now we have this age where people are saying, I think AI might be just demons. I think it might be a vessel for consciousness that comes from the other side. So very interesting. But yeah, try to give the free people at least a little taste of the activities of the CCRU and how this piece ties in.
So the guy who wrote the book on the Dark Enlightenment, Nick Land, who used these accelerationist philosophies, he was part of the CCRU at Warwick University in England. It was a collective, right? And it was actually started by a woman named Sadie Plant, who used it as a cyber feminist research group. But she was, I guess, kind of like not super into it. Nick Land was. So he kind of joined the group and started taking over and doing experiments. And their experiments were in doing various writings and experimentations. In fact, I've got the book over here somewhere. It's fascinating. I'm only a little chunk into the book, but I've already got just tons of content that I'm going to put into my book that I'm going to write about the Dark Enlightenment.
Are you referring to his book, The Dark Enlightenment?
there's a book called The Collective Writings of the CCRU, where
Okay, cool.
It's a published collection of the variety of essays and stuff that they were writing, and a lot of them were just like experiments or like fictional writings. They were really into a variety of subjects: cyberpunk, horror, H.P. Lovecraft, esotericism, Carl Jung, William S. Burroughs, Kabbalah, numerology, and demonology. So those are all of the occult things that we talk about all the time. And they were really into a thing called hyperstition, and that's again this idea of like synchronicities manifesting new realities. And they call it a positive feedback circuit, meaning they thought they could sort of create reality on some levels. It's a mixture of superstition and like hyper reality. It's I don't know. It's like a mixture of propaganda, magic, predictive programming, symbolism, synchronicities, and so on. Like I said, it's kind of like the ideas of Pepe the Frog, right? Because Pepe the Frog was this strange moment in time where people on 4chan were fueling up this sigil, this meme, and they believe that they were able to get Donald Trump elected because Donald Trump, I don't know if people remember back in 2016, they thought there was zero chance this guy was getting in. I mean, it was as good as in the bag. He wasn't going to get in, and it happened, and it was shocking. And that's one of the ideas that supports this kind of concept. Now, Nick Land during the CCRU says that they were actually doing magic. They weren't talking about it. They weren't researching it. They were doing it, and they were engaging with these forces, these entities. And he sums them up as a collective called the Outside, right? Which is, of course, a reference to the adversary or Lucifer, right? Satan. But he said that the Outside were these entities that could condense into our realities through hyperstition, right? You could fuel enough intention, belief, energy into these sigils or entities, and they could manifest into our world. And he specifically called them the old ones from H.P. Lovecraft, which is your Cthulhu type entities. Not to like go into this deep rabbit hole, which ties us into Kenneth Grant, because that was Kenneth Grant's whole thing, was making contact with these Lovecraftian entities. There's a weird connection there of how the entities from the outside, they move in a different dimension. They're not from this space-time. And that's what, if you look at the cover of the CCRU collective writings, they've got this thing called a numerogram, and that's kind of their visual depiction of what these entities are trying to sort of explain to mankind as their system of time and space. And I know it gets really weird. I'm trying to understand it as well. And just like you said, the real tell was when Nick Land was at that interview, and he said that in Kabbalah numerology, the CCRU is equated to 666, which is the mark of the beast, right? So there's a lot of weird things with how the occult and magic and manifestation have worked their way into our politics and our government, and it's part of the UFO phenomenon. And that's why I wrote those two books about aliens, UFOs, and the occult, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, because that's what this is all about. And that's exactly how I interpret when I interviewed Dr. Jacques Vallée. He basically said, like, yeah, that's right. That's how this works. People got to understand that.
Well, that's good. Way to stick the landing for the free people. Then we'll get into some of the deeper details. I'm going to throw the cover of the book up on the screen because, yeah, it is kind of a sigil-esque. This is just so wild. I've just never heard of this group. Everyone wants to go reference Jack Parsons and the Babylon working, and we got this happening in the 90s. Like, it's much fresher. So I appreciate this. This really is always a pleasure. I love you in a completely hetero Christian brotherhood kind of way.
Same, my brother, same.
But I a lot of things. We'll have to talk again. There's more on the plate here we didn't get to. We got a new Jordan Peele movie that looks like it's going to get into the occult initiation of the celebrity culture. We got a new Spielberg UFO film. We're gonna be busy guys in the next 12 months. But you've really been crushing it lately. Very prolific, always doing stuff. Let people know what they should check out. You got the Substack, the YouTube channel, the podcasts. Hit them.
Yeah, the reliable is the podcast, Occult, Symbolism, and Pop Culture. All the other things are, I'm at the whims of whoever wants to cancel me and torch my account. So, by all means, follow them. Instagram's been pretty good to me, at Isaac Weishaupt. So you can follow me there. And then Yeah, the podcast is Occult, Symbolism, and Pop Culture. You can find it on everything. I've got a Patreon when you're ready to, break free of the pesky ads that I make my free feed losers suffer through. So be sure to check that out when the time is ready and you're ready to commit, because I've got just hundreds of bonus episodes now. I do bonus episodes for the Patreon, and there's a 55 episode Twin Peaks deep dive. That's more Twin Peaks occult symbolism than anyone could handle. And in fact, I'm writing the book about it right now. So, and then I'm going to write the Dark Enlightenment book probably early next year. So yeah. And then all my books are on Amazon, narrated on Audible under Isaac Weishaupt. So pick your favorite sort of method of taking in my nonsense and go for it. Thanks again, Greg. You're the man, dude. I appreciate you.
You are the man. Thank you for remembering us little people on your meteoric rise through the ranks of conspiracy commentators. Keep up the great work and take care.
Thanks.
Dark Enlightenment be damned. Another new term for transhumanistic technocracy, as if we didn't have enough. But hey, if they self-identify as the Dark Enlightenment, who am I to question it, especially these days? But it is always great to get an update from Isaac. He's one of the OGs that I've really stayed in touch with and talked shop with off the air. And he's just a good guy. I like Jay Dyer too. He's more of the academic flavor, but he's also more rigid in his Christianity. I don't mean for that to be an insult at all. Jay is also very funny and appreciates good humor. I'm only saying they really are the two main figures in that pop culture / occult analysis wheelhouse. Jay is also more on the movie side, and Isaac is more on the music. I don't know why I'm going down this road of comparing them so aggressively. I like both. Isaac and I have a good rapport, and it's good to talk to him every so often. That's it. And the catalyst for this was the Diddy trial, and that is why I reached out, and I wanted to wrap a bow around that because we did talk about it the last time he was here, because it was just starting, and we were like, wow, I can't believe this is really happening. And we always want these things to be bigger than they are, and we want more to be revealed. But there is often a bit more in the details for those who actually do pay close attention, and I know Isaac is that guy, so figured it was worth talking about because this is the best we get when it comes to exposing these networks. For my money, I think the biggest thing in this episode is the very Pizzagate adjacent network of freaks that we talked about. We got into it a bit in the free show, but this is a great example of why I'm sometimes really happy that we do have the free plus split, because we went deeper into some of this so-called art that these Chapman freaks are auctioning off for six figures. Little toddler statues with a dick nose and an asshole mouth. Really twisted shit. And it is episodes like this one where I feel a little bit bad and somewhat awkward subjecting the poor guys in the studio editing booth to this stuff, because usually they're just trying to edit some promo video for a real estate agent, and then they got me on the schedule every so often throwing out stuff like this. But I did send them the images and asked them to put these statues on the screen at that part of the conversation, because I don't want it to be hypothetical. I want everyone to see exactly what we're talking about. And this part of the conversation did come up organically right at the 1 hour mark, which is great because I do think these images would probably get this episode taken off YouTube and get me another strike. I'm not trying to be dramatic. We also know that conversations about vaccines are more likely to be censored than the bizarre Elsa Gate adjacent cartoons that they have on there. But I don't think anyone would blame me for being a bit nervous to have that stuff in the free show. But anyway, if you're a free listener and you're curious, you only have to Google Chapman Brothers fuckface, one word, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And looking at it again, if someone pays $100,000 for this stuff, they probably do put their dick in that hole, right? I would say that these people who purchase this should be investigated, but I know the argument. Yeah, bizarre taste in art is no crime. Some of the nicest people I know love gory slasher aesthetics for some reason. Definitely not my thing, but when you get this weird torture porn art of children and it's circling around the elite class and sold at these auctions for insane prices, I think we know what's going on. Even if there's nothing we can do about it, at least acknowledging it and being like, hey, there is kind of a line, right? I mean, something's wrong with the psychology of a person who would make that stuff and then support art for those kind of insane prices. But, whatever. Very interesting rabbit hole. So, yeah, the first hour set the stage and the second hour dove us right off of it. The CCRU stuff was really interesting too. Probably need to go further on that. Balenciaga and the Chapman brothers. Lots of wild stuff in that second hour. Me and Isaac have been doing this a while. We know how to bring the heat. Sign up for Plus if you want to hear more. Ad-free and action-packed. Help me help you and get twice as much show for as low as $8 a month. Links right in the show notes. Tokenized podcast link for your apps so you don't even need the username and password stuff anymore. It's basically magic. Thehighersidechats.com. Okay. And let me also say this. After I recorded this episode, I got curious about some things we talked about, and I did some follow-up research. And guys, I went too far. This happens every couple of years. I went too far. I did not realize that there are Telegram channels that are very raw, probably way closer to dark web content than anything else that's easily accessible. And I wanted to see more about that artist who made the image on Jay-Z and Ellen's hoodies that we talked about. The Castaway Wilson imagery, which I really do think is a method of flaunting this stuff because Tom Hanks is a freak too. Was that a Spielberg movie? I'd have to look that up. But what I saw claimed to be the source image for this stuff. It's basically a screen capture, or it seems like a frame of a video that is allegedly out there where a little girl's face is cut off and worn by allegedly, supposedly, according to the internet, Hillary and Huma. And I don't know. I don't think this shit has only happened once anyway, so I don't know if that exact video has been kind of twisted around for political purposes. But what I saw looked like a photograph of a skinless face of a little girl, and the eye is there, just the same composition as that sketch on the hoodies. And it really disturbed me. And it's been a few days now, but God, it burned itself into my head, and I could not get into a good mood for a couple days. I wish I had not seen it. It took a chunk of my soul or something. It's one thing to talk about this stuff, but when you see it and realize you can't do anything about it and these people are completely untouchable, it's just tough. You don't want to see that. Ugh. I didn't even want to tell my wife because I don't want her to even think about that. But what can we do really but hug our own kids and try to be our best selves and appreciate life? I don't even really want to talk about it anymore, but I thought it was important to say because I don't know when else I would say it, but just be careful how far you go. I'll move on, but the story with this video is that it was on the Wiener laptop, and that when cops saw this and investigators saw this, they were so deeply disturbed that a lot of them quit their jobs, and they say some committed suicide. I don't know about that part. Seems convenient for those out there who want fewer people to have seen the evidence. Convenient suicides, a theme lately on the Higher Side Chats. But definitely I understand quitting your job or being asked to be reassigned to even traffic patrol or something because you can't be looking at this all the time. Okay, moving on. So the last show was with Janice McAfee, THC's first in-studio guest. I am really glad it worked out, and it ended up being content that was personal and fresh, and that made it more interesting to be in person, I think. And I do feel for her loss. I appreciate her thick skin and willingness to talk about all the theories and speculation. It's also a show, the only one I can remember, that cut off in the middle of my damn wrap-up. It is always something, right? So this happened on the export. The guys at the studio said there was a power outage overnight, and they exported the show. You know, these things, they take forever. So you set it, and you go out at 5 p.m., and you come back the next day, and it's exported. And I guess it didn't go all the way through, and no one caught it until I saw someone bring it up in the comments. So you didn't really miss much. It was just like 12 more minutes of me rambling on. But of course, there had to be a caveat with that show, right? I was so excited to get it out. Of course, something goes wrong. And I couldn't really fix it on the video. It wasn't worth it to me to re-upload it to YouTube once there's already a thing happening. And then I had bad video compression issues here at home. It was a 16 gigabyte file, and that's too big for the Plus streaming platform. So I basically just fixed the free and Plus audio shows, and I'm just saying, let's move on from that. You know, a little annoying, but hey, if you really want to hear that last 12 minutes, it's there in audio form. As for the rating, though, I'm glad it was well liked. It's sitting at a 4.8 right now, and that's about as high as it can go. So I'm just glad it was well received. Pretty interesting, especially the Plus show where she looked right at the camera and made her plea to the code breakers to keep combing over the whack token and John's Twitter feed from that time. That's good content. I probably should clip that, but she really did sell it, and she was great. And I don't want to badger you about Plus, but hey, if you like what I'm doing, you're missing half the show without Plus, and half's kind of a lot. I am happy to say I only get paid directly from people who buy the ticket and take the ride and enjoy what we're doing here. And if you respect that, then, you know, buy the ticket and take the ride. All right. So we have come to the meetup calendar. Let's see what's going on. Wednesday, September 10th, Dayton, Ohio, at the Canal Street Arcade and Deli. September 14th, Austin, Texas, Sour Duck Market. September 15th, Auckland, New Zealand, at Gale Breath's Ale House. September 21st, we have one at Neff Brewing in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And September 28th, Portland, Oregon, at the Bunk Bar. Okay. So I know I bitched about wanting to see more events. We do have a couple more events, and there'd probably be even a few more, but I found out we also had a glitch on the website with the CAPTCHA thing. It was keeping people from posting. And man, I hate CAPTCHAs, but I guess it's something we can't remove, or everyone would remove it. So that is the next thing on the list. Got to fix the CAPTCHA for the meetup website. If you tried to make an event and had a problem with it, try again in like a week or so, and we should be back in business. All right. Well, that is the show. Big thanks to Isaac. Show him some love if you like his work and dedication to this really dark stuff that he does spend a lot of time trying to suss out and package for people so they have a better understanding of how the world really works. And yeah, it's tough work to do. So give him an attaboy. Thank you for listening. Take care of you and yours. I've done my part. Your move, pedo art peddlers, entertainment industry traffickers, and frazzle drip freaks. Your fucking move.
There's darkness everywhere, right on up to the edge of the light. A cold and persistent force it is, Lord knows, not hard to find. We get dropped in this place where the dice decide to land. It's a goddamn freaking miracle if we get a decent hand. So be thankful if you're born on the right side of some random arbitrary man-made imaginary line, and be grateful if you it's just luck. We are free to go sometimes when we pretend we're stuck. Being humble never hurts. Take in what you see. You might not pat your own back too hard if you know how bad it could be. Just be thankful if you're born on the right side of some random arbitrary man-made imaginary line, and be grateful if you happen to see yourself born into a decent, even boring family.
Oh, you're still here. I thought we were done. Well, there you have it. Another great entry into the deep and robust THC archive that goes back over 15 years at this point. Peruse it all at thehighersidechats.com and take advantage. And now that that interview is over and we're winding down, I can talk to you a bit more casually about what it is we do here. Because again, you just heard or watched the first hour of a 2-hour interview on a show that has gone to great lengths to stay outside of the ad sponsor monetization model and instead opted to maintain true independence through subscriptions only. Over time, I've done a lot to improve the Plus member experience and tried to keep convenience and quality of life in mind, which many paid offerings sadly do not do. But let's talk about some of the details that tend to be on people's mind when they consider making the leap. So if you are someone who just listens to the audio, as the show has been for many years, we have the same long-running THC Plus subscription for $8 a month, 5 new shows a month, and the full archive, no seasons or breaking it up in weird, sketchy ways. We have a great on-site player with all the bells and whistles. You can download full episodes and listen offline. And there is a lively comment section and a 5-star rating system on each episode page, so I can see what Plus members tend to like best. We also found a way around the annoying need to put in your username and password when using the private RSS feed in many of the podcasting apps. Now we have your subscription data built right into the link on the My Account page. Just copy it and paste it in pretty much any podcasting app and you are done. If it ever freezes up on you or stops loading or anything, you can even regenerate yourself a new URL on the same My Account page. It's an upgrade that truly does make it much easier than it used to be, and we even take it one step further. When you first sign up for a membership, we send you a welcome email that includes that link. Again, you just copy it, paste it, boom, you're in. And I know accessing the main show in an ongoing way is really just the only thing 90% of Plus members want, but if you do get into the website, you will find some old bonus episodes and live events on the bonus content page, the old cover songs I used to close the show out with, as well as some of the new ones I've made recently. And you also get a lifetime forum membership where we have all sorts of interesting categories and threads, including the best place to get a guest request to me. People ask me about that pretty regularly, but how could I not put added weight to Plus member recommendations? So there you go, hint, hint. Now in June of 2025, I made the big leap to video. It seemed like that's what a growing number of people wanted, but the fear was over being able to deliver episodes in video conveniently behind a paywall because it's a lot more challenging than it is with just audio, though we did figure it out. Although streaming video does have a lot of extra cost to it, go figure, and that is why we added the new tier of THC Plus TV for people who want that video without changing the price for those who don't really care. So for $12 a month, you can get the full shows in video with captions and a nice word search and all the features of the audio player, as well as Android and Apple casting from your phone to TV. That's nice. I also sweetened the $12 tier with one other important feature that has ongoing costs to keep updated, and that's a Clip Genie archive of all THC episodes going back to the beginning. And what Clip Genie does is allow you to search by any word and be served up all the transcripts of all the episodes that have included that word and a clickable link to start the episode right at that point in the show. It's very slick. People have asked for transcripts for a long time because episodes are so information dense, and this was a way for me to not only provide that, but make them all searchable with a system that provides everything a person could want for finding exactly what they're looking for with the hundreds of episodes there are. All right, so if you think I'm good at what I do and you appreciate the extra effort I make to try to come prepared and lead our guests through the most compelling parts of their work, I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for you to get twice as much of the content you already like for $8 or $12 a month. I've used this analogy before, but we tip $8 for all sorts of services these days without even thinking about it, especially in this new world of the dumb tablet checkouts where they pre-highlight 20% and make you feel bad for switching it to anything else. And when you tip $8 because someone brought you a sandwich from the back, nobody brings you a second sandwich. I know ad-supported podcasting makes it seem like it should all be free, but independence is worth something, especially in this counterculture field, and there's no way to make a viable career out of it otherwise. Some people will say, well, what about value for value? But I tried that first, and big donations came with aggressive guest suggestions, and that just doesn't work for our type of format, though it may work for other formats. Either way, the subscription model has not let me down in 15 years, and I thank those who sign up, and I hope more people do. I try to make it worth it. As for the typical questions I get that might help you decide or speed up your onboarding, usually I get, where is the second hour? Because unlike other shows, I don't split each episode into 2 files because I find that to be inconvenient. You've got to find the other one and then load that up, and it stops in the middle, and you might have to hear 2 introductions and 2 wrap-ups. It's a little bit clunky, but no. Plus members get the full 2-hour conversation just as it was had in a single file. I always ask for the promo stuff last, so I cut right before that and splice it onto the first hour, and that is how the free hour is made, and I just strip out the rest. So it still sounds pretty whole for free hour listeners, as you just heard, and I do prefer it that way. And when you're logged into the website, all the shows magically switch over to the plus shows. So it's seamless, and that seamlessness has caused confusion before. But just look at the show length if you're unsure, and know that you cannot be logged in and be seeing the free first hour episodes. Trust me. I spared no expense. They call me the John Hammond of conspiracy podcasting. I don't say that. Other people say that. So yes, if you just signed up and you want to go back and listen to older episodes, you do have to skip ahead about 50 minutes to hear the new content. But once you are a member, you'll be much happier with the full show in a single file and not maintaining 2 feeds and jumping from file to file just to hear one interview. Another common question I get asked is if Plus members have to listen through the website, and of course the answer is no. We have that custom tokenized RSS link that works with many of the podcasting apps, and the site is built to have some nice tools included to make it easier and more fun to listen, but it's not necessary. Spotify is the only weird one. To get Plus on Spotify, you must sign up through Patreon because they have a corporate partnership together. Honestly, we know how the game is played. I don't have to go too deep into it here, but yes, major corporations have taken over the internet. They get everyone reliant on a handful of convenient platforms, and then they push out the controversial content. Even though I try to stay integrated for your convenience as much as I can, but some of that stuff can change at any time, and that is why I always prioritize and maintain my own independent website. But that's it, really. I don't want to front load the show with too heavy of a pitch because then it sounds like an ad when I like to say we're ad-free. Sponsorship-free and independent is a little more accurate. But because the video has complicated some things, it just seemed best to run through all of it and slap it at the very end of these episodes so your questions and concerns could be answered. And hopefully I've convinced you that it's worth it. Sign up at thehighersidechats.com or right in the show notes or the episode description. Again, we send you that welcome email with the private tokenized RSS link right there, so you never have to log into the website if you don't want to. And if you sign up for video, we are going to be sending the new episode notifications there too, where you click the link and it logs you in automatically and you're right there to stream it. So I'm doing what I can. Help me help you. Double your pleasure, double your fun, and get twice as much with THC Plus. And that's all there is. There isn't any more.
The highest